I'm going to just start mad closing stuff because I've got tons of stuff open that I probably don't want to look at, and I don't like having too many tabs on the bottom. Okay, so to start, let's get into our main and let's load this thing onto the simulator. So start simulation, okay. And this might not even compile now that I think about it, because we've written a ton of logic that we haven't even tried to compile yet. So I would be surprised if this compiled right now, just to be brutally honest. I would be surprised. We're probably going to have like 10 errors to fix or something. Okay, so far so good. 74%, 78%. Check before loading, yeah. Error found. And okay, so let's cancel that and bring up our properties down here, or our diagnostics rather. And oh, come on, where is that? I've got it just minimized real small down there. Okay, so info, that's what we need. And 7 errors. Well, I said 10. Okay, 7 isn't too bad, I guess. And it looks like that's all in RLO is not initialized. I know what that means. We didn't put sets or nots in there where we needed to. So let's jump in, minimize this, and okay, so right there we're trying to reset that and it's not letting us. So let's go ahead and load up a negative value into our register before we try to do that reset. So I'm going to cut that for now, and I'm just going to put a not into my register, and then I'm going to put that reset in there. And that's at the beginning of stabilize mode. So here we go at the beginning of generation mode. Cut that, put a not in, and then paste that back in. We've got one at the beginning of cooldown mode. Put a not in there. Whoops. Paste it back. Our cooldown transition. Control X, not. And okay, and I bet if I scan through here I can probably just find those other ones. Yep, here's one. So put our not in, and where else? I bet we've got 1 or 2 more, don't we? I'm looking, but I'm not seeing. So okay, maybe I got them all. Let's try this again. So I'm going to try the download button because we've already got our simulator running. And we've still got a few of these. So, and I guess in here it's going to make us set before we negate. So, okay, let's do a set and then do a not. And backspace. Let's keep going and try and find the rest of those. So we've got a not right there. That's going to be set. Well, I'm typing. Why isn't it responding? Oh, it's freezing on me. I forgot. Tia likes to do that. Okay, so set and then not. Come down here. Set and then not. Not in set, just set. Okay. Set, not. Set, not. And, all right, let's try and dump that. Hey, we got it to compile. That's a step. That's a milestone. We like it. Let's run it. No sense waiting around. Start the module. Okay, so let's close out of modes. You know, all that programming, we only had errors in one STL program block. Man, I am awesome. That's way better than I expected. That's not to say everything else works, but man, it at least compiles. I'll take it. I didn't expect to be here for within like 20 minutes, so yay. All right, so let's start monitoring here. And it looks like we've got our sequence running. And we haven't needed to init anything, I don't think. So let's come down here and see what language we're running. Right now we're in ladders. All right, so we're going to pull up our modes for ladders right here. And let's monitor this guy as well. And I expect we're in idle. So, oh, we're in a fault mode because we haven't done our e-stop yet. So remember, our e-stop has to be closed for there not to be an error. So now that we've got that, let's go into ladder alarms and just toggle an alarm reset. So we need to be online with this. And modify to 1, modify to 0. Okay, and why do we still have that? Oh, because I think I modified back to 0, so I need to modify that to 1 and leave it there. Got it. Okay, so now let's reset the alarm, modify back to 0. Okay, now we have no alarm here, and I'm guessing we don't have any alarms anywhere else. So let's go ahead and close that. And oh, it says we've got a high oil temp alarm as well. And that's probably because we don't have our alarm values set yet. So let's go back into our alarms after all, and we better set some of those values, right? So let's just go up to the top and let's start working our way down. So our oil low flow set point, let's go ahead and make that something like 20. Oh no, for our, okay, so our oil low flow set point, I'll leave that at 0 because we're not going to be less than 0 and we don't really want alarms firing right now. Our overcurrent value, let's make that like, I think we had it at 550, and I'm just going to put it up to 1,000 to make sure that it doesn't happen. Coming down here, a high oil temp, same thing. I'm going to make that 1,000 to make sure we never get there. Overspeed alarm. Oh, and we've got bad polarity on this, so we're going to set our overspeed to 1,000, but then we're also going to change that to be a greater than, because that's how overspeed works. And let's go ahead and download this since we made a change and we do want to be back into monitoring. Okay, so we're back and we set our overspeed, high oil flow, or oil high flow. Man, we've got reverse polarity on that guy too. I'm a dingleberry. So high flow needs to be greater than. Let's download again. Load. Okay, we're back online. And for that high oil flow, let's make that 1,000 to make sure we never hit it. And brake failure alarm. We need a delay time on that. So let's make that like 100 seconds to make sure that that doesn't happen. And, oh, I see a problem here. On our multiply block, when I put 100 in there, we're multiplying 100 by 1,000. and we're getting that out into this BFD value, and it's coming out negative. So let's go ahead and set that down to something more conservative for the time being, like a 30. There, see, that works. So 30 seconds. We've just got some limits on what we can set those timers at. And let's see, is there any other alarms that I think are going to cause us a problem? We got rid of that. We got rid of that. We got rid of overcurrent. We got rid of high oil temp. And we got rid of overspeed and high oil flow. Yeah, so I think we're good. I think we're not going to have any alarms causing us any problems. So let's close this alarms, and hopefully we won't have to go back into there. So let's go online with our modes here. And I would expect us to be in idle mode at this point. And let's see, down here in idle mode, yes, idle mode is energized. That's good. So right away our sequence is working the way that we want. And that means our brake is energized and all this other stuff is de-energized. Great, let's push the system start button. So modify to 1, modify to 0. So we hit the start sequence button, but you see that we're not in warm-up mode. Okay, that's a problem. So why aren't we in warm-up mode? Well, now we're in fault mode, and we're in fault mode because somehow we did get a high oil temp alarm. Alright, so let's go back into alarms and see why we got a high oil temp alarm. Let's load this up. And let's, we need to go online. Yeah, we're online. And where is that high oil temp alarm? Oil high flow. Oh, I thought I saw it. There we go. So what is our oil temp? Our oil temp is 86, which is not greater than 1,000. And okay, so I don't see any reason why we should have gotten that high oil temp alarm. Let's toggle our alarm reset, modify to 1, modify to 0, and maybe we're pushing a value somewhere that we're not supposed to be pushing it. So what happens when we go into warm-up? When we go into warm-up, what are we moving where? Our warm-up RPM is going into the baffle PID, which doesn't exist yet. And that's what's happening there. And when we get down to our oil, what's moving? We're moving one oil temp value, but that's not the one that's being evaluated for the alarm. And I don't see anything that would be affecting this. We're looking for our oil temp to be greater than 0 for now, but we probably don't want that, so let's set that at something like 150. And that way we won't immediately transition out of here. So we can kind of step by step this thing. So let's try our start button again. Modify to 1. Modify to 0. Oh, you know what? We didn't reset the alarm yet, did we? Yeah, I don't see the alarm there. So let's come back into modes. Let's go down and, okay, we're not faulted. So what mode are we in? We should be in some mode. And it looks like we're not in warm-up. We're not in stabilize, are we? Oh, that's still warm-up. Okay, we're not in stabilize. We are not in generate. Ah, we're in cooldown mode. Okay, so we jumped the gun a little bit on that. No problem. So I'm just going to cool down transition. I'm going to see if it'll let me toggle that. So modify to 1, modify to 0, And where'd we go? Nope, we stayed in cooldown. So I'm going to do this another way. I'm going to just go and e-stop us. So we're in alarms over here. And let's just modify e-stop to 0. Modify it back to 1. And then toggle our alarm reset to 1 and then back to 0. Okay, so now I bet we're in idle mode, and if we are, yay, that's one thing that works. Okay, good, we are. Nice. Okay, so back to our start button, modify to 1, modify to 0. We are in warm-up mode, and we should be here until we get that oil temp. And let's go ahead and get our stabilize mode ready. So our stabilize mode, we need to set that set point value. So our stabilize set point that we're adding and subtracting on, yeah, let's go ahead and set that to something like 300. Okay, so now once we get down there, we shouldn't just bounce immediately into the next step. So we're in warm-up mode, and now let's drop our desired oil temperature down to 80. So now we should start timing and time our way out of here. And actually we didn't have a time value, so we jumped immediately, right? Yeah, we have a 0-second timer, so not a big deal if we don't test that guy. And we're down here into stabilize now. And since we're using the same timer logic all the way across, if I go ahead and set this here, I think it's going to be just as good as testing the one up top because it's the same logic. So, all right, we're looking for our current to be between 295 and 305, so that all looks good. And we haven't hit it yet, so before we modify that, we know generation mode should run until we hit the stop button. So we don't have to worry about setting anything in there. Let's just go ahead and set our stabilize set point back down to 0. And in 5 seconds, we should transition out of here. 3, 4, 5. We're out of stabilize, and we are we generating? Yeah, we're generating. Our interlock is closed, and we're going to then transition into cooldown, and we're going to be in cooldown until we're looking for our oil temp to get below a certain value. Our oil temp is 86. That's set to 0 now, so that should be fine. So we can go ahead and hit that system stop button now. So modify to 1, we're out. Modify back to 0, no timers on that. Now we're in cooldown mode and everything is good. Let's go ahead and set a timer set point. So our delay set point will be 5 seconds, which, let's see, oh, here we go. Look at that. That's looking for stabilized mode, not cooldown mode. So we've got a problem right there. Let's paste that as cooldown mode. That needs to be cooldown mode. And let's go ahead and reload this guy. Okay, so now it looks like everything's happening all the way down. And I'm just looking back over everything to make sure all this says stabilize, all this says warm up. Okay, I think we're good. And we're still in cooldown. And now I just need to set this value to something above 86. So we'll just set that to 90. And we start timing. 3, 4, 5, and boom, we're back into idle. Okay, at that point, I'm going to say that our ladder is good enough. Our ladder sequence is working. Our graph is obviously doing its job. So let's go function block, SCL, STL, and if we can get through without all the extra explanations this time, if we can get through, I'm going to call it good. So now we don't have to go and set a bunch of values. We're going to still have to toggle a couple back and forth, but it should be a little bit quicker. Now we don't have to set timer delays and stuff. So let's try to make this same thing happen in function blocks. I'm going to close our modes ladder, and we've got our alarms up, and I'm very possibly might need that while we're debugging some of this logic. So let's go into our modes function block, and let's go ahead and run this thing up. And actually we're not going to see anything yet because we still have to switch over to function block programming. So let's come back in here, and where is our int? I'm not going to toggle the button. I'm just going to set that guy equal to 2. There, now we've got our function blocks. So let's come into modes, and we expect that we're down here in our idle mode. So there we go, idle mode, and sure enough, we've done this set and all of these resets because idle is true. And these are showing blue because their values are reset. So that's not showing you that the instruction is happening. The green line tells you the instruction has happened. The blue is telling you the value of what they're referencing. So let's push our start button, and that should get us into warm-up mode. And our condition to get out is for our temperature to be above 80. Well, we want to bump that value up to 100 so we don't leave immediately. And then let's modify to 1 and back to 0. And at this point, we've energized our devices. We're in the right mode. That's a good thing. We've got our delay timer. We didn't set that last time, so let's go ahead and set it this time. So now we've got a 5-second delay. And once I bump this below 86, we should transition out of here and go into stabilize. And we need to bump up our stabilize set point, so I'm going to put that up to 300 just so we don't immediately transition out. Now let's come over here, and we're going to bump that back down to 80. So 5-second timer, and then we want to pop into stabilize. There we are. It happened. And stabilize, everything looks good, and we're going to go into generate next. So let's bump that value down to 0. Timer should start timing, and yep, then we pop into generation, and just like that, we've got our interlock control set, and we're waiting until somebody hits a stop button. And for cooldown, we're going to look for our oil to be below 90, and that's not a problem right now. So let's go ahead and toggle our stop button. We instantly left. Now we should be in cooldown, and we're not in cooldown. What happened here? Oh, let's see, we were waiting for our cooldown to be below 90. And yeah, because it was already below 90 and our timer value is set to 0, so we instantly transitioned out of here. Also, we're not seeing our cooldown delay set point, and I'm not sure why that is, but probably not a big deal. Oh, maybe just because it's not energized right now or something. But anyway, I'm going to say that that worked because we just didn't set the value. And now we're down here in idle mode. So I'm going to call that good. I'm not going to worry about that any further. Let's close this. We're in main. Let's bump our programming language value up to 3. So now we should be running our SCLs. and our SCLs aren't running. It looks like I might have changed something that it didn't like, so it kicked us out. Let me get everything going again. And oh, I see what I did. I clicked the wrong thing, so that should be 2. Yeah. I was supposed to change the number on top. I changed the number on bottom like a dumbass. Okay, let's change that to 3. Now we're evaluating our SCL. Perfect. So let's open our modes SCL. And yeah, we're obviously not going to see a lot happening in here, are we? So we're going to have to set up a watch table. Bummer. Let's go into watch and force tables. Take our watch table here, and I'm just going to delete everything out. So what stuff are we looking for? We're looking for our system start push button, our system stop push button. We're looking for our warm-up oil temp set point, or that's our warm-up oil temp. We're looking for our stabilize kilowatt set point, and then we're looking for our cool down oil temp set point. And we're also looking for our oil temp. Let's put a T on there. And then we're looking for our current. And I don't remember what else we're looking for, so let's just go with that for the time being and see if we can kind of get halfway through this. So our oil temp is 86, and for warm-up oil temp it's going to have to be something above 80. So let's change that 80 right now and make that 100. We'll shoot that in there, so now we know we're not going to bounce immediately. Let's go ahead and try to start our process. So we started, and you know what we're not looking for? We're not looking for warm-up mode. We're not looking for stabilize mode, generation mode, cool down mode, and idle mode. Okay, now we're in idle mode, even though we have set the system start push button. So let's push that back to 0, send it in, and push it back to true, and try that one more time. Okay, so we've got a problem. We're not going into that mode. Let's also look at fault mode and see if we've got an alarm condition somewhere. We don't. Okay, so something in our SCL logic is not letting us get into warm-up mode. So if e-stop or brake failure do this, and we're not doing that, so let's check our transitions and make sure our transitions aren't locked for some reason. So warm-up transition, our warm-up transition is true. That we've got a problem here. And let's go ahead and look at our stabilize transition, generate transition, cool down transition, and all of those are true. So it looks like our SCL logic is giving us a problem. So why is that? Well, first thing I'm going to do is let's go ahead and for an else, let's set all these conditions to false. So if it's true, we're going to set all those to 1, and if it's false, we're going to set all those to 0. So that might just get us out of the woods from where we're at now. Let's download this, load it, go back to our watch table, and all these things are still showing as true. That's a bummer. I'm going to make sure, this is silly, but I'm going to make sure we're actually running our modes SCL. So let's come into here, and yes, modes SCL is running. I don't know why those aren't expanded, but Okay, so it looks like the problem is definitely in here. And do we have an e-stop or a brake failure alarm by any chance? So we're going to look for e-stop alarm. Ah, we do have an e-stop alarm. Brake failure alarm. Okay, so let's go into our SCL alarms, because I think that's where we've got an error. And I bet we're looking for the wrong state of the e-stop. So let's come down to the bottom. Ah, yep. So if this should be not e-stop, that's when we want to be setting that alarm. Great, we found that pretty easy. So let's download, load, and we can close out of here. Now, let's see, we have got our e-stop set, which it should be. Now, if I toggle my alarm reset, so alarm reset, now we should wipe out that alarm. So we want to send a 1 in, true, and we can false that back up. Okay, so now we don't have any more alarms. Now let's try our push button and see if that gets us into the right mode. So send it in, take it back out, and yes, now we're in warm-up mode. Perfect. So our stabilize, we need to set that to 300, so on the next transition we don't just skip past. Got it? And now we can go ahead and set our warm-up oil temp to something like 80. Send that in, and now in 5 seconds we should transition to stabilized mode. Boom! We transitioned. Great. So now that we're in stabilize, we can set that stabilize set point back to 0. Send it in, and in a couple of seconds we should transition to generate. We did. Good. And once we get to cooldown, let's see, what's our cooldown set point? Our cooldown set point is 90, and let's go ahead and make that like 20 so that we don't skip past it again. And let's go ahead and push the system stop push button, and that should instantly drop us down into cooldown mode, which it did. Good. And let's send a false back in there, so basically release our push button. And now we can take our cooldown set point and bump that up to 90, and 5 seconds later we should be back into idle mode, and we are. Okay, I'm going to call SCLs working, and let's go ahead and close that modes file. Let's come into main, and now let's go online with this and set our programming language to 4. And yeah, now we're running our STL, so let's go back to our watch table and do everything from here. So right away, we're in fault mode, and probably we're evaluating that e-stop incorrectly. So let's go into alarms STL, skip all the way down to the bottom, and e-stop alarm, actually we're starting with and not e-stop to set the alarm. So that's strange. We shouldn't be getting that. Just in case, I'm going to go back to our watch table and toggle that alarm reset. So let's get our check mark off of there. Just toggle our alarm reset, and yep, we did not reset our alarm apparently. So go back to that being false. our e-stop is true, our fault mode is true, and oh, but wait, that's not from an e-stop alarm, so we have some other alarm that's putting us into fault mode. Okay, that's interesting. So let's see what it could be. Is it brake failure alarm? Nope. Is it overcurrent alarm? Yes. What about overspeed alarm? Well, I don't think we need to go through all of these. Right away, we know we've got an overcurrent alarm. So let's see why. We've got our current up here at 0. And what's our overcurrent set point? Overcurrent set point is 1,000. I'm guessing we have our polarities reversed. So let's go in here to overcurrent and find that guy. It'll help if I don't have all this crap on the bottom. Okay, so overcurrent, we're loading the current, we're loading the set point, and sure enough, look at that, reverse polarity. That needs to be greater than I. So let's download this, load it, and let's go back to our watch table. And okay, now let's toggle our alarm reset one more time. So send in a false, or rather send in a true, and then make that false. And we're no longer in fault mode. Good. We are in, oh, it says we are still in fault mode. Okay. That's really interesting. So let's see what else we might have. Let's look for our high oil temp alarm. Well, we also have a high oil temp alarm that's messed up. Okay, jump back in here, and let's just look at our polarities. Oil low flow is less than, overcurrent is greater than, high oil temp needs to be greater than, overspeed needs to be greater than, and high oil flow needs to be greater than, and brake failure alarm needs to be greater than, e-stop. Okay, so man, I just did a massive copy and paste through there, and I just never changed my signs is what happened, and that's why that got all screwed up. So all right, let's come in here and try to reset alarms now. And alarm reset, e-stop, we're still in a fault mode. What did I miss? I don't have brake failure, overcurrent alarm, okay, e-stop, brake failure. I don't see any alarms. What am I missing? My oil high temp or oil high flow and oil low flow. So oil high flow alarm and oil low flow alarm. Where is that guy? There it is. I saw it and then I moved. All right. So I don't have any of those. Why am I in fault mode? I must have a problem with how I'm handling fault mode. So let's go into STL modes, and here we go, and e-stop or brake, and I'm just going to go online with this. So, I need to look for and not e-stop. Okay, instead of looking for e-stop for one, we need to be looking at e-stop alarm. And that's when, okay, now that we're actually looking at this stuff, now instead of setting, which is going to make it equal to 1, we need to assign whatever our register value is into the fault mode. That's what we did wrong. Okay, load this thing up, and there we go. Everything is looking good now. So I think we can go back to our watch table, and do we still have the alarm? I'm going to just test my e-stop now to make sure that I got that right. So I'm going to try and give myself an e-stop alarm. False. And my e-stop alarm is not active. And still doesn't work, so it looks like we have some problems with our alarm STL as well. Let's get in here, and it looks like we're evaluating, and let's go down to where we're evaluating e-stop. And we're not evaluating e-stop because we don't have any register values in here, so it looks like we missed a jump somewhere. Let's chase this thing up and see where it got broken. Okay, we're evaluating high oil temp alarm. And oh, look at that. We're jumping to end of line, and we shouldn't be. Where we should be jumping after that is, let's see, we've got our timer reset. We should be jumping to overspeed alarm. All right. And let's look through here, and yeah, sure enough, after these, we should also be jumping to overspeed alarm. We didn't change those, paste those out. Here we're jumping to the next. Here we're jumping to the next, jumping to the next. Okay, I think that's got us. So hopefully we'll see these things light up now. Let's try going online. We're online. And do we have evaluation all the way down? Yes. Okay. So back to our watch table here. We have an e-stop alarm. That's good. So let's make our e-stop true and our alarm reset true. And we got rid of our e-stop alarm. And we got rid of fault mode. Okay, so let's put our alarm reset back to false and get rid of these two things here. And now we are sending in transitions on everything, even though we don't have an e-stop condition. So let's go into the beginning here and try and figure out why we're setting all of those. In the beginning, and let's pull up let's go online so we can monitor. Our e-stop alarm is not active, so we're not jumping to e-stop transitions. Instead, we're jumping to warm up. But once we've already set these, we're not resetting them anywhere. So let's copy all of that, and we need to come down here, and I'm going to Control X, Control V, and put that down here. Control C, copy all of that, put that all here, and I need to reset all of those. So the first thing I need to do is set my register, and then I'm just going to change all of these S's to R's. So if we get to this point, then I think we can safely reset all of our transitions. And we might be setting a transition down the road, and that's fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and download. Got it. And back to our watch table. Okay, now it says we're in stabilized mode. I don't want to be in stabilized mode. I want to be in idle mode. So let's give ourselves a fault. And now it says we're in generation mode. Okay, that's not good. So let's toggle this e-stop back to true. Let's try our alarm reset. And yeah, we're still in generation mode. And just out of curiosity, I want to see what happens if we bump another alarm. So now we've got another e-stop alarm. We've got fault mode, but we're still in generation mode. Okay, so I'm just trying to kind of get a feel for exactly what's happening. Let's push that in, go back into our STL modes, and figure out what's happening with generation mode. So first of all, when we come up here and we have an e-stop alarm or a brake failure alarm, which we do, we should be doing all of these transitions and setting all of them. But when we do, look what happens. We're not jumping anywhere. Got it. Okay, so at that point, we need to jump past these resets. So let's go ahead and make this, we'll call this pre-start warm-up. And after we reset all of those, then we want to come down here into our start warm-up. Okay, colon. And here, I don't know why we've got an R. Oh, I accidentally set an R in the last revision. That needs to be an A. Okay, so if we check and we have one of these alarms, then we're going to jump to e-stop transitions. Otherwise, we're going to jump to pre-start warm-up. So copy that. Pre-start warm-up. Oops, pre-start warm-up is here. Otherwise, we're going to jump to start warm-up. And if we jump to start warm-up, now we're going to go through and this is where we would do our transitions. But if we have an e-stop, we really don't want to do any of those transitions. We don't want to go through any of these. If we've got an e-stop, we want to go straight to idle mode. So I'm going to copy that, come up here, and if we have an e-stop alarm, we're going to jump to e-stop transitions. And then after e-stop transitions, we're going to jump unconditionally to idle mode. Otherwise, we're going to go to start warm-up. Okay, so I can go ahead and call this start warm-up and get things out of here. There we go. That needs a quote. All right, let's load this. I think that's got us working. It compiles, so right away I'm hopeful. Let's get to our watch table. And right now we've got all of our transitions, but look at that. It looks like we're cycling all of our modes. And why would we be cycling our modes? Because we don't have the system start push button engaged. So what's going on here? When we get to e-stop, we're detecting the alarm and we're jumping to e-stop transitions. We're setting all of our transitions and we're jumping to idle mode. So when we get to idle mode, we're saying set not. And we're resetting our cooldown transition, but that's getting set over and over again. So I think that might be the problem. And coming up here, I think we need to one-shot this. So on either one of these, let's do an FP OS2, right-click, define tag, local static. Download this. We're going to have to reinitialize. That's fine. Load it. I think we're getting warmer. I really do. Okay, so let's see where we're at now. In our watch table, we've got our e-stop alarm. We're in fault mode, and we're in generation mode. We don't want that. Okay, why are we in generation mode? We've got all of these guys set to 0, and we only jumped to idle mode. Let's see, e-stop transitions and jump to idle mode. Otherwise, every other scan, we're going through everything normally. So we're looking for warm-up transition. We don't have it. And it looks like we've got some flow problems here. We've got some blocks that are just running into each other instead of jumping unconditionally somewhere where they're supposed to. So for our warm-up, we're jumping to stabilize, or we're jumping to warm-up time. When we get done with here, we're jumping to stabilize. But when we get done with warm-up exit, we don't have a jump. Probably not a big deal, because we should be going straight into stabilized mode. But let's go ahead and seal the deal. So we're going to jump into stabilized mode. From stabilized mode, we've got an unconditional jump to generate mode. And after stabilize time, generate mode, stabilize exit, JU to generation mode. Generation mode, jump unconditional to cooldown. And here we go. We've got a generation exit, jump unconditionally to cooldown mode. And from cooldown mode, jump unconditional to stabilize. And here, why are we jumping unconditionally to stabilize? Okay, that's a problem. We should be jumping unconditionally to cooldown. All right, and that's on our cooldown. So generation is jumping to cooldown, right? Yeah, so stabilize jumps to generation. Generation is jumping to cooldown. So yeah, after the timer expires, we should be jumping to idle mode. And down here, jump to idle. And down here, jump unconditionally to idle. And after idle mode, if we get here, we do all of our sets and resets, and then we should jump unconditionally to end of line. And at end of line, we should be setting our fault. Okay. I don't think that's got us fixed, but I think that's a step in the right direction to cleaning up all this nasty STL code I've got in here. Let's go to our watch table and see where we're at. So right now we've got an e-stop alarm, we're in fault, and we're in generation. So we're still there, and we need to figure out how to get not there. And I know I've got issues with the order that I'm handling some of this stuff in. So coming in here, if we've got e-stop or we've got brake failure alarm, then we need to jump to e-stop transitions, start the warm-up. Otherwise, we need to start warm-up. And after we do e-stop transitions, and instead of jumping here, I think we need to jump all the way to the end. And what does the end of line do? Set fault modes. So let's do that. We need to make this our end of line. And I think that's going to bypass all the logic that's screwing with us on an e-stop. So let's load it and go back to our watch table. And I'm going to clear our alarm, and then I'm going to re-engage our alarm. So let's alarm reset. Got it. And take our finger off the button again. So now everything is good, but I'm going to create that alarm again. And I want to see us go into idle mode when I do. So let's go ahead and make that e-stop true again. But we should have created an e-stop alarm, which we did. We're in fault mode, and now we're in cooldown mode. So we got out of one place, and I know why. I know what's happening now. let's go back into the modes. And once we set those, we need to leave those set. So on e-stop, instead of making this a one-shot, we need to make that permanent. That's what I did wrong. Load it. And now, what do you want to bet everything works great? I figured it out. All of my transitions are energized. And what am I toggling? I'm going into warm-up. I'm also going into idle. But why am I leaving idle if my push button isn't pushed? I should not be going into idle. Well, let's look at my idle transition. Actually, I don't have an idle transition. I have a start sequence bit. And that start sequence bit is true, and it should not be true. So why am I engaging the start sequence bit? Coming down here into start warm-up, we're front positive, and again, we should have an assignment on that rather than a set. So, okay, we got to the bottom of that mystery. Now, do we still have our start sequence bit? We do. So why is that? Let's come back in here, and in startup warm-up here, let's see, we are looking for our start push button, and you know what? Now we're getting that because we're not evaluating this logic anymore. So I think I need to really just grossly relook how I'm handling my moves through here. I don't need to be moving section through section. I need to just go to the mode that's relevant and then get out. So first thing I do is I check my e-stop, and then I go to my transitions. And if my transitions are good one way or the other, I need to come down here, and we're going to call this jump to mode, BE for the time being. And let's see, we're either going to jump to e-stop transitions, or we're going to jump to mode. And at the end of this, we're going to jump to mode. Okay, here we need to look at what mode we're in, and we need to jump to the appropriate one. So the first thing we need to do, let's start with clearing things out. And then we're going to say and we're going to look for our warm-up mode. So if we have warm-up mode, we're going to JC to start warm-up. And I forgot to put a space in there. All right. Then we're going to clear out, and we're going to load our stabilize. And then if we're in stabilize, we're going to jump conditionally to stabilize mode. Then we're going to clear out, and we're going to load generation mode. And we're going to then jump conditionally to, and that's going to be generation mode. Clear the registry, and cooldown mode. Jump conditionally to cooldown mode. Clear out, and idle mode. Jump conditionally to idle mode. Jump unconditionally to end of line. All right, let's throw this dart and see if it sticks in anything. I'm kind of starting to get fed up with all of this because, man, I hate STL, and troubleshooting STL is about the worst. Okay, so all of our transitions are energized. We are in idle mode. We're in fault mode. We are not in any other modes. I like that. Okay, that's already looking good. Let's reset our alarm. And let's see, our e-stop is true, which means we don't have an alarm. All of our transitions are engaged, and we are stable in idle mode and no longer in fault mode. Okay, let's try pushing the system start button and seeing what happens. And when we do that, nothing happens. We stay in idle mode. Okay, so let's go back into our modes STL. What went wrong? Since we're in idle mode, that's where we're going to have to evaluate our push button, not in start warm-up mode. So let's come over here, and here's where we're looking for our start push button. So let's go ahead and Control X to get that out of there. Back that up. Come down here to idle mode. And this is where we're setting all of this. And normally we would jump to the end of line. But I also want to do something else. Clear. Load up the push button. And if it's good, then we want to see if it's first scan, and if it is, we're going to check idle mode. We don't need to check idle mode because if we're in here, it's because we're in idle mode. And then what we need to do is, and I'll go ahead and say set the start sequence bit, and then jump to end of line. And once we're in warm-up mode, I want to reset the start sequence bit. So R start sequence bit. Okay, I like it. One more round. I think that's about round 10 with this nasty code now. And let's see where it's got us. So start push button is true. And we're already in generation mode. We don't want that. So let's clean the slate here. Let's push in a false on the start push button. And let's go ahead and give ourselves an e-stop alarm. So send in a false, then send in a true. And we're in idle fault mode, and our transitions are all stable and engaged. Good. So hit alarm reset, turn it back off, and now all of our transitions are still engaged. So we're not in fault mode, but all of our transitions are still engaged. So back to mode, and up here, we're doing our e-stop transitions. We're setting them, but we don't have any place to reset them. So when we jump to mode, in here is where we need to kill all of our transitions. So let's copy that, clear, and right here, we're going to reset all of these. So reset, 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 and reset. Okay, download, load, get rid of these properties, watch table, and let's see where we're at right now. All of those transitions are still set to true, and why are they still set to true? When we come in here, we are jumping to mode, jump to mode, and when we get into jump to mode, we're not ever jumping to e-stop transitions. So I don't know, we're not setting those here, obviously. And when we get here, we should be resetting all of those transitions. Okay, so it looks like we're jumping in here and we're energizing these guys all the time. And I see why. After we set these, well, one thing here, we don't need to be jumping to jump to mode. We need to be jumping to start warm-up. So let's handle that. And then, let's see. That shouldn't have been causing our problem. Our problem is that we're jumping here when we're not supposed to be. So let's try this. I'm going to break these two possibilities out. And I'm going to say jump conditionally to e-stop transitions. And then I'm going to CLR. And then I'm going to say and that was a break failure. And then jump conditionally, otherwise jump to mode. I don't know, let's give that a shot. I'm getting desperate here. Alright, we're loaded up. Check our watch table. We've still got all of our transitions. And where are those getting set? Are those getting set somewhere else in here? Because you can't tell me that we're still setting them right there. No, we're not. We're jumping down here to reset, and we should be wiping all of those guys out. And coming down here, we're resetting, checking alarms. Give this thing a chance to load itself. We're not jumping into any of this because we're not in any of these modes anyway. Here, we're resetting our transitions and jump to mode, and that's it. I don't see anywhere else where we're setting these transitions. Let's pull up a cross-reference on our warm-up transition, and let's just see where all this thing is writing from an STL block. So here's our STL blocks, and we're writing, and it's all being done from modes, and it doesn't look like any other STL blocks. Our sequence uses it, but it's read-only. So yeah, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places in here where we're writing that. But as far as what's actually energized right now, I don't see anything. I do see that we're resetting it on all of these, but somehow or another we're ending up with a value of 1. And other than that, down here we're not touching it, so there must be something with my resets here that somehow, I don't know, do I need a not to be in there for those resets to work? That would be kind of a strange way of doing this language, but I'll try anything right now. Yeah, okay, that's what it took to reset those guys. And that's kind of bizarre, but seems to have been it. And yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and come up here, and I'm going to put my OR back in because that was a little bit more elegant. Download, load, and all right, where are we at? Okay, so we're in idle mode and everything's good. All right, I like that. And let me go ahead and create this alarm one more time. So now we've got an alarm, we've got fault, we're in idle. And okay, let's go ahead and reset the alarm. So reset true, reset false. And now let's try our system start push button. Now we go into warm-up mode. Okay, that's a plus. That's a start. And let's push that value in. And I'm going to test my e-stop one more time. And we went into fault mode and we went into generation mode. So that's not what we want. And that's why I tested it again, right? So why did we go into generation mode? Let's go back into our modes here. And all of our transitions are energized. And as far as our navigation goes, what mode are we supposed to be in? Supposedly, we are in generation mode. So in generation mode, we should be seeing that we have the transition, and it looks like no, here we're resetting the transition. So we really need to work on how we're managing these transitions. That's what's killing us. For e-stop, we're jumping here, we're setting all of the transitions. If we don't have those, then we're jumping into this navigator, and that is resetting all of our transitions. So actually we need to block this off. Our jump to mode, let's copy that. That jump to mode actually needs to start right here. So let's punch that in. And this needs to be something that happens if we're not in an e-stop mode. So after we do these e-stop transitions, then we're jumping straight into warm-up. And actually, we're going to now jump to mode. And up here, rather than calling this jump to mode, we need another jump to mode down here. So let's copy that, paste it here, and this is going to be reset transitions. And we're going to come here if we don't go to this. So if we come to e-stop transitions, which means we have one of our alarms, then we're going to go to jump to mode. Otherwise, we're going to go to reset transitions. And okay, that might do it, but I've said that before. Let's get out of here, come back into our watch table, and we've got all of our transitions active because we have an active e-stop alarm. Let's go ahead and reset that alarm. All of our transitions are now gone. Okay. Now our e-stop is true. We're in idle mode. So let's push our start button one more time. Now we're in warm-up mode, and I'm going to give us our error again. So we already transitioned into stabilize, and then we transitioned into generation mode. Hopefully that's because we have our conditions set. Our warm-up oil temp is at 80. Yeah, and our temp is at 86. Okay, so there's a reason that we transitioned to generation. That's fine. That's not alarming. So let's do something that is alarming. Create an alarm. And it threw us into idle. Yes! Now we're on the right track. Okay. So let's go ahead and get rid of our alarms. And let's try to make it through this sequence finally. So first of all, our warm-up oil temp. We want to be warmer than, let's go ahead and set that at 100 to make sure that we're not. And okay, and I'm sending in too many things at once. I don't want to do that. So, okay, now let's put us into warm-up mode, and we should stay there this time. Okay, we're in warm-up mode, and for our stabilize, oh great, there's our consumption alarm. Well, we won't be here much longer, I don't think. So, not 3. I typed 300. Do I really have to wait for it while it thinks about producing zeros? There. Oh, this thing's slow. Consumption, yeah, that's great. Okay, so let's send that in. And now that we've got that, we should be able to go ahead and bump our warm-up temperature. So let's set our warm-up temperature down to 80 and send that in. Good. And we're in warm-up mode. Oh, we set the wrong temperature. So let's set our cool down to 100 and let's set our warm-up to 80. Good, let's send those in. And in 5 seconds we should transition. Good, we're in stabilize mode. And now let's set our stabilize set point to 0. Send that in. And we should transition into generation, which we did. Good. Now let's check our cooldown and set it 100. So when we hit the stop push button, that should transition us immediately into cooldown. Yes, it did. Let's take our finger off the button. And actually our cooldown temperature is higher than our oil temp. So we should have transitioned out of cooldown already. Let's check and see why we didn't. So one more trip back into modes. And let's go down and check our cooldown. And we're looking for our oil temperature to be less than, in which case we should be going to our timer. Timing for 5 seconds, transitioning to cooldown exit, and cooldown exit should set our cooldown transition and send us straight into idle mode. So what's going wrong here? And here we go, look at that. We're looking for the wrong trigger bit. So one more copy and paste error. Let's paste that in there. And yeah, that's got us. Now let's save that and let's send that into the processor. Back to our watch table. And yes, we have transitioned into idle mode. That was all that we were missing. So